Hi everybody and welcome to a new tactical analysis video with me, Gully, looking at a contentious subject I would suggest, and that is the inclusion or exclusion of Pablo Sarabia within the Wolves team. As we know, late in the day we managed to secure a 2-2 draw at Brighton at the weekend, and it was the first time in the Premier League we'd really seen Pablo Sarabia get any kind of minutes this season, and having gone into half time at 1-0 down and him be introduced to with a change of shape alongside Carlos Forbes to the fold, we managed to secure a 2-2 draw, and he had a positive impact on the game. And I think there are a lot of calls for him to be introduced into the team from the start, having had quite a good season in terms of numbers last year. But I really wanted to get into the detail of A, for a start, why he hasn't been playing, and B, how we can actually fit him into the team and allow him and the rest of the team to flourish, so that we get the best out of everyone's abilities. To begin with, I think it's worth obviously setting the scene to see how he delivered for us last season, and we know that he wasn't necessarily a Gary O'Neill favourite to begin with, and the opportunities came for him very late in the day against Spurs, where he managed to basically win us the game with some incredible quality with a goal and an assist. But B, injuries, with him being kind of the next in line behind Hwang, Cunha and Neto as the senior forward within the team that fitted the way that Gary O'Neill wanted to play. But in terms of his impact and productivity, I've placed a few metrics here in terms of his numbers from last season, and he showed really, really well in the final third. You can see top of the squad rank for expected assists, passes into the penalty area, shot creating actions, all kind of very high impact, high productivity from a guy who his sole real purpose is to be a technician on the pitch, display his vision, and try and help the team score goals. Now, I know there are fans of Sarabia within the fan base, but I think it's quite clear from Gary O'Neill the way he sets up. He wants players who can cover ground, who are athletic, who don't necessarily need the allowances and the kind of compensation that Sarabia needs within the team. And I think this is all kind of borne out in the Brighton game. So I'm going to kind of touch on what I mean when I say you kind of need to make allowances for him. We know Sarabia doesn't have great physical gifts. He's not quick. He's not particularly strong. So he's kind of easy pickings if you make it a 1v1 against a fullback in the wide areas. And you find a lot of the time, because he's a guy who comes in search of the ball and really wants to get on the ball as often as possible, because his technical gift is in possession, and that's where he can have the most impact. He tries to drop deep, and you find him in these kind of situations quite often where a man has tracked him, and because of his lack of physicality, he can't go and engage contact wise. He can't play within a yard of his man to receive, because they'll be on the front foot and they'll be likely to try and take the ball off him. And you often find him in these spaces where he's facing away from goal. He's overcompensating in terms of trying to protect the ball, because he obviously is at risk of losing it from more physical and more athletic players. And you don't tend to make any headway when he's getting the ball in these kind of positions. A lot of people have suggested maybe he can play as a number 10, and the problem with that is that it's the most crowded part of the pitch. If you think about specifically this weekend, the most athletic players, someone like Carlos Baliba, who is an absolute behemoth in the midfield in terms of covering ground, making tackles, all playing within these spaces. And there are a couple of instances here where Craig Dawson tried to find Pablo Sarabia between the lines. He received the ball, and on both occasions he was pounced on and lost the ball. I think the one occasion he was fortunate to win a free kick, but ultimately he wasn't secure enough in possession because of his lack of physicality and his lack of ability to actually protect possession and play in an agile way in those spaces. Now, when I say that you have to make allowances and you have to kind of compensate for him in terms of if you want him to display his abilities, because we haven't really got anybody else like him within the squad in terms of just genuine technical quality. Once he gets the ball, doesn't necessarily need to find the most perfect spaces, can do things from distance, can do things close to goal. You need to have runners around him to make sure that he's able to have an impact on the game. And this is where I think we had quite a bit of joy last season. There was one occasion within the Brighton game where he did find a little bit of space, with Dawson finding him in between the lines centrally, and lo and behold, he found a good pass, Cunha and Dran Larson. And this is the key for me, is that he had runners in front of him running towards goal, and he was obviously facing the play in the way that you wanted to. And you can rely on him to produce quality in those moments. Again, thinking about people moving in order to take defenders away from him and create that space where he can have an impact. I've circled here. Nelson Semedo is someone who, if Sarabia plays in front of him, will have a big workload, and that's partially because out of possession, I think Sarabia obviously is able to impact the game because of his lack of pace and things, but also just, again, up and down, taking defenders away and give him the opportunity to get on the ball as much as possible. In this instance specifically, you've even got Santi Bueno, who has stepped forward, and actually again created a situation where he's hit the box. He had possession in this. They worked the ball out to Semedo and back to Sarabia, and he's then made the extra man who is able to give Sarabia the time and space to cross. Didn't come to nothing on this occasion, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that your centre half is even able to, give, is needed and happens to be making the necessary movements to allow Sarabia to kind of have an impact on the game. Load of instances here that I found from last season when I talked about obviously the data, really showing up well. All situations where Sarabia has managed to find a Wolves player in the penalty area. And on all of these situations, you've got two runners in that kind of right hand channel, right hand half space that are taking defenders away from him in order for him to have time to play the ball and give quality to the team. Now, obviously, it's like I said, we haven't got many players like Sarabia, and we've seen someone like Jean-Rick Bellegarde featuring kind of the wide right position, which you will tend to find Sarabia will play. I think back to like the Villa game. There were a couple of instances where Bellegarde, who is obviously a much quicker, much stronger player than Sarabia, and doesn't necessarily need all these players making movements for him to give him space to impact the game, because he can play with his back to goal, he can pin a man, he can turn away from a man, he can beat a man with his pace and his technical quality and things like that. We've seen him dribble away from 2-3 players at once. But you also know that Jean-Rick Bellegarde isn't an impactful player in the final third, doesn't produce the numbers that Sarabia does. Sarabia actually scored 20 plus goals in the season at Sporting. He's got a good instinct for goal as well as being a player able to create chances. What you find often when the ball is in and around the penalty area and Sarabia isn't necessarily dictating the move, you will find him between the sticks, in a position to potentially get a goal. I think he got a goal in that kind of way in pre-season once, scored a good header last year against Sheffield United. So the more players that we can get on the pitch that have that knack for goal as well is probably a good thing. At the moment you're looking at Cunha and Larson as really the only guys that have got any sort of pedigree, with Aït-Nouri obviously delivering a little bit on that front as well. But I just wanted to kind of have a look at, from a tactical perspective, how I would, if we were to start with Sarabia in the team at the weekend. I think whether it's Sarabia that starts in this position or not, I think this is kind of the shape that we need to go with anyway, for a game that we should be looking to try and win. And that's kind of in a 4-4-1-1 almost, I would describe it as. Here, just got it on my tactics board to share with you. And you've got obviously a slightly more conservative back line with Totti in as the left back. Nuri push further up, and then I've placed Sarabia in this wide right channel. This is where he's going to get the space. I don't see any value in playing in central areas, because I think you just get lost within the game, and you'll get frustrated with the amount of times he loses the ball, because these guys are absolutely massive in the middle of the park now, and with Crystal Palace playing a back three, you're likely to get a centre half stepping onto you and those kind of things. And someone like Mark Gahey coming into the space that Sarabia plays in, he's not going to stand a chance. So what you'll find we need to do is obviously get Semedo providing the width, have him often holding a position in front of Sarabia, getting that defensive line tucked round as we like to do. I want to see probably João Gomez and Tommy Doyle in the midfield. Gomez being the more mobile one. I think when the ball, if and when the ball breaks down and you need to recover your position, him sitting in this right hand space is good. He will get up and down. He's got a lot of energy, and then you can always have Matheus Cunha and Nuri combining on the left hand side, who are both capable of causing plenty of damage. And then it's all about, like I say, creating those extra runners in front of Sarabia so he can go and pick passes and make and have a real big impact on the game. It remains to be seen if he's obviously played himself into a starting lineup now. But for those that really think he should just walk into this team, you have to understand the impact that it has on everybody else. Like I said, Nelson Semedo's workload goes through the roof when he's playing with Sarabia in front of him, because he needs to be up and down. And we know that Semedo is so important to our recovery and defensive play, because of his quality 1v1 defensively. Santi Bueno did a really good job while we were chasing the game last at the weekend to defend those spaces when Semedo ventured forward. But if you think about having Totti as the left back, obviously you can kind of compensate for that a little bit more as well. It's going to be a massive game, as we know, and there's a risk with every single choice that Gary O'Neill makes at the moment. But I think, being given the fact that we're at home and we should be looking to take the initiative within the game, and we should be looking to try and get on the ball as much as possible, and the simple fact of the matter is that Crystal Palace aren't scoring many goals at this moment in time, we need to look to try and get ahead in the game and then settle our position. So Sarabia from the start, allow him to pick up the pace of the game quickly, and hopefully he can deliver the goods and come off with the team in the lead, and then we can kind of stiffen up the team off the back of that. But let's see how we get on this weekend, and hopefully we'll be talking about our first win of the season.